hello. In today's extra Friday video from Tabletop Impulse, we're going to be looking at the new FAQ that dropped today, the 31st of May 2024, and see what they've changed. Let's go. So the first change we're going to look at is the Scout Squad, and this is the one where I need a little bit of help from the comment section potentially. So let's read the change first. Page 46, climbing equipment. Change the second bullet point to read, this operative only needs to be within black, horizontally, of a terrain feature in order to climb it. So, to spoil the rest of the video, they've changed almost every instance of climbing equipment. In fact, they pretty much changed every instance of climbing equipment they could find. But I'm not actually sure what they've changed. So, it says the operative does not need to be within black of a physical. It's what it used to say. So it used to say this operative does not need to be within black of a physical and climbable part of a terrain feature in order to climb it. Right? So it doesn't need to be within black of a physical and climbable part of a terrain feature. Right? Now the base rule for climb says first the operative must be within black of a physical and climbable part of a terrain feature to climb it. So the rule used to be a straightforward negation of that clause, right? So you could climb. So what this meant was you could climb up. So if you have like a better decimal bridge, right, and you're under it, you're not within an inch of it because you're not near any of the place where it touches the ground, but neither are you within an. But you can climb up straight up to it. You can climb effectively up the air, right, onto the top of the bridge. That was my. So the idea is you got your grappling hook type gun, you shoot in the air, and you zip up like James Bond, right? That's how I thought the rule worked, anyway. But now it says that you need to be within black horizontally, and I'm not sure what they're getting at. They're getting at one of two things, okay? So either they've broken climb, right? And this was my first reading of it. It's like, you've got to be within black horizontally of terrain to climb it, so you've got to be next to the thing you're going to climb anyway. Unless you had a terrain piece that had a non-scalable, like a surface that wasn't physical and climbable, but you still got to be within an inch of it, because they still negated the physical and climbable part. But I'm just not sure what that would mean, because you still need to be within an inch of something, right? And then I thought, I sat with that for a few minutes, and I thought, well, they've put in the word horizontally, so does that mean that we're now going for an aerial view? You know, something like, I think Star Wars Shatterpoint does, where you look over the top, and you're like, well, I'm within an inch horizontally of this piece of terrain, and any distance vertically, right? So I'm not actually within an inch of it. You cannot draw an inch from the model, but if you look from a plane view, you'd be within an inch from a bird's eye view. Is that what they're getting at? Like, but that's not a thing. Typically, that top-down view in kill teams typically not a thing that you would do. And so that would just make the climb rule or the climbing equipment rule work like I always assumed it worked. So does this mean that there were people in the world, right? This is the only conclusion I can come to. Does this mean that there were people in the world that were trying to use the climbing equipment basically like a commando grot? Because if you look at the wording for a commando grot, it's got a whole pile of stuff about like movers, it had flies, Were people using the climbing equipment to try and fly up on the diagonal? Because I never assumed that you could do. Mind you, I don't think I've played any of these teams that have climbing equipment, but I don't think I ever assumed that you could do that. Let me know in the comments your interpretation of what's going on, because I think, right, that they're trying to make it so that it works how I always kind of thought it works. So because climbing equipment isn't just this rule, there's two other bullet points that is what makes it useful in that you don't count the distance and stuff, and that's fine. Yeah. So if you're under a bridge, you can climb up to the top of the bridge, I think, right? But you can't climb like on an angle towards the bridge, I think. Don't know. Hope that helps someone. Hey, at least if you're wondering where the value added from the video is, it's not Guy tells you that what the rule means. At least Guy can tell you that the rule has changed. And then you can go and, I know it sucks, you can go and work it out for yourself. Let's get on to some things where I've worked out what they're actually doing. Okay, so Mandrakes. So there's a lot of text in Mandrake changes. So first in the errata section, Shadow's Reach. They've just said this tack-up is not in use when the close quarters rules are in effect. So the Shadow's Reach tack-up required you to control a heavy terrain feature in your opponent's territory, like 2 different ones. And obviously on Into the Dark, all the walls are heavy terrain features. So it was pretty easy as a tack-up to score on Into the Dark. So they've just taken that tack-up out. Fine, yeah, makes sense. Okay. Then there's a lot of FAQs, so let's go them through one by one. So, question. Is it possible to increase an operative's APL to more than 3 using the Chooser of the Flesh operative's Soul Harvest ability? No. And that's a question that I asked when I actually went through the team. In the video where I went through the team's rules, because it wasn't clear to me that you couldn't do that. And someone in the comments said, oh no, because you can never get a modifier in more than +1. I left it at that. But it seems like some other people have been arguing that you could, but now we know that you can't, right? So that's fine, that's good. Question. Does the Shadeweaver operative's open shadow portal action count as a use of shadow passage for the purposes of that action's once per turning point limit? Yes. Which I don't think I thought that was the case. I've not played into or against Mandrakes yet, but I don't think that I thought that was the case. So that's a good clarification. It feels to like, is this thing with erratas and FAQs where buff and nerf are social constructs, basically? Because it's like, has the clarification, because as I'm reading this, I will read a thing and go, oh yeah, well, we were all playing it that way, where we all is like me and Zimbad, right? So maybe in your play group, something will come off as a buff or a nerf to you because of how you were previously interpreting the rules, right? But from my own personal perspective, and if you're watching my YouTube channel, I guess you care out my personal perspective. To me, this feels like a nerf, right? Question. Some rules apply when an operative moves within a distance requirement of a token. Other operative or similar, such as the proximity mine from the Phobos Strike team, the Quicksilver Strike from Wormblade. If a Mandrake operative performs a shadow passage action and is set up within the distance requirement of the aforementioned rules, is it the same as moving there? No. During a shadow passage action, the Mandrake operative doesn't move. It's removed and set back up again. So again, if they want it to play that way, that's another really good FAQ, because I would have assumed, right, that if you shadow passage next to a proximity mine, the proximity mine would go off because you're proximate to it. And in fairness, I'd probably wish it worked that way, because that's the way they've ruled it makes like a legalistic sense, right? But it doesn't make sense to me within the narrative of how the mine, like if the guy materializes out the shadows next to a mine, the mine's going to go, oh, a thing, and explode. But that's not how they want it to work. So fine. Basically what I'm saying is good FAQ, you know? Yeah. Question. As the shadow passage action is not a move, the operative is removed and set up again. Does this mean the Mandrake operative can be set up on the other side of wall terrain? Yes. Note that as per the core designer's commentary, the heavy part of a terrain feature it must be set up within black of must be a pillar or a wall end, excluding the wall ends for hatchways. Now that's, or a heavy terrain from a Killzone Galadox supplement, e.g. Ancient Apparatus. Now that's interesting. So if you're using Shadow Passage to move rather than Into the Dark, you can't just use the wall, like the ordinary thin bits of wall. You have to use the pillars. Interesting. Yeah. Bit of maybe a nerf for some people, depending. And again, I've not actually played as or into Mandrakes yet, so I don't know what people were generally doing. But it doesn't seem like it was not obvious to me, put it that way. Question. If an enemy operative performs a charge action, then performs another action before performing a fight action in the same activation against a friendly Mandrake operative, can I still use the Shadow's Bite tactical ploy? So the Shadow's Bite tactical ploy is basically, if someone charges and then fights you, you can play this ploy and then you go first. And what this is, so a way of stopping that from working, rules as written, would have been to go charge and then like, oh, I'm going to loot the objective. Or, you know, if you've got like an APL 3 Space Marine charging the Mandrake guy on APL 2 on the thing, that often plays charge and then loot and then fight, right? Which is, even if you're not trying just to get round the Shadow's Bite. That's a thing people do. If they're an APL3 team charging an APL2 guy on objective, they will often charge, and then they control it because they're APL3, so then they loot, and then they fight. They don't want to fight then loot because you might die in the fight phase, so at least then you've looted, right? So that's good that the Mandrake player can still get his Shadow's Bite in if that scenario arises. That's good. That yes, needed an FAQ because it's changed what the rules said, but yeah, cool, agree. Question: if I activate the Dirgemore Operative's haunting focus ability, I can't read, and that Dirgemore incapacitates the enemy operative. I'm laughing because the next 3 questions are all just about this Dirgemore, which is basically, Mandrakes are a really weird team. Right, so if I activate the Dirgemore Operative's haunting focus ability and that Dirgemore incapacitates the enemy operative it's focused on, do I activate next or my opponent? So your opponent. So what the Dirgemore does, just to clarify, is when you're going for your tactical ploys, your Dirgemore picks out the operative for his haunting focus, and then when your opponent activates the haunting focused operative, you can instead activate your Dirgemore. So it messes up with it gives you a double turn basically. So that's why this is here. So if the Dirgemore then kills the enemy operative whose turn is it, it's still your opponent's turn. You don't get the triple turn, okay? Which I'm surprised someone was trying to argue they should get a triple turn, but I guess people are people. Question: if I activate the Dirgemore Operative's haunting focus ability and that Dirgemore incapacitates the enemy it focused on, do I... I've just read that one. What am I doing? If two Dirgemore Operatives focus on each... Now, this one I am convinced never happened outside of a Discord server, right? There's never been a game where this happened, but I'm going to read it anyway. If 2 Dirgemore Operatives focus on each other with their haunting focus ability, and Operative A is selected to activate normally, then Operative B would attempt to activate first, and as a result of the haunting focus ability, which model activates? Operative B. Right. It's a way in which I differ from other people in the tabletop gaming community, right? So a lot of the time when I read these errata and FAQ documents, I'm looking and thinking, all right, yeah. Sometimes there are actual things that have happened, and you think, yeah, they needed an answer to that. There's other people, there's people who value a clear and precise rule set just for its own sake. So they'll read it and go, oh, but what would happen if this, and this? Better ask them, even if this never happened. I just don't, it doesn't bother me. And I'd almost wish, like I was saying about the climbing ropes, I almost wish they didn't write it, because the fact they've written it has made me really confused. If the effect has stayed the same and you're just cleaning up the verbiage, it's almost like you draw attention to a thing and then people start puzzling out it more. I don't know, but yeah, I guess it can't be a bad thing to have clarity, even if it's for a made-up scenario that only happened in somebody's head. It could happen, right? If I activate a Dirgemore Operative as a result of a haunting focus ability, does my opponent still have to activate the operative that the Dirgemore is focused on? Oh yeah, yes, they do, yeah. So if you go, I'm going to do this guy, and then you've got a hat, now I'm going to do my Dirgemore, and then as a result of what you do with your Dirgemore, your opponent goes, actually, I'm going to activate this other guy because you just moved your Dirgemore, let's say, into somewhere where it can shoot. You can't do that. You've got to carry on with the one you said you were going to activate. Yeah. Mandrakes, complicated. Very complicated. Nemesis Claw. So 2 FAQs for Nemesis Claw. The first one is to the Midnight Cloud ability. So this changes the first bullet point to, if it has a conceal order, regardless of any rules that treat the operative as having an engage order, e.g. vantage point. So Midnight Cloud has a couple of conditions that you have to fulfill in order to be obscured, right? And one is that you have to have a conceal order. Now, some people were, I think, absurdly arguing that if you picture a barricade, if your Night Lord is behind the barricade on conceal and someone else sees him on a vantage point, they negate his conceal order, and therefore he doesn't meet the criteria for Midnight Cloud, and therefore he can be shot. And what makes that absurd is, even by the rules, if the Night Lord is in front of the barricade, so not in cover from it, but within an inch of it, and on a conceal order, then he would be obscured by a midnight cloud. So they've changed this. I think everybody was playing it this way that I spoke to. I did see a comment, I think, in Glandy's Discord, like apparently all the American TOs were playing it the way that I think is kind of bizarre, but maybe that's true. And so we needed the FAQ. Good. And we got a verbiage cleanup on Vox. And as far as I can tell, there's literally just a verbiage cleanup and nothing else, right? So, Vox Scream, they've changed the phrase, cannot activate that operative this activation to until you've had a turn to activate a ready friendly operative or performed Overwatch. I guess because they decided that this activation wasn't, like, cannot activate the operative this activation, like, this activation isn't actually a rules term. And then in the same rule going the other way, they've written, they used to have, cannot activate that, they used to have, enemy operatives eligible to be activated, which they've realised could be ready enemy operatives. Not friendly, as I've written on the slide, but ready enemy operatives. And I think that, what I think's happening is, as they've been preparing for the next edition of Kill Team, which I believe is going to be a small evolution from the current edition, it's clear that at some point in Kill Team's development, they hired a second or third person with a more technical mindset, and they've kind of gone through and they are revising things that will be in the revised edition of the Kill Team rules, and then they're pushing some of those out earlier, is what I think is happening. I don't know. I know nothing. But I don't think anything here has changed. Obviously, if you're playing in Midnight Clad wrong, then you now have official word of God that it's the way that people are already telling you to play it, but there we go. Yeah. Wormblade. So Wormblade, and there's going to be a lot of this. Wormblade just have the same slightly incomprehensible climbing equipment change aspect. Like, I'm sure there are people watching this that's like, no, it's obvious people were doing this, and now they have to do this. And there's people, if you're one of those people who understands this really clearly, let me know in the comments, because I just can't quite. Were people genuinely treating all climbing equipment as like the Grot Commandos thing until this point? And if so, why? And yeah, but yes, they have the same climbing equipment change. Warp Coven. Warp Coven, quite interesting one, actually. So Warp Coven were given this to the end of their third paragraph. When randomly determining a boon in matched play, re-roll if you determine a boon another friendly sorcerer operative on your roster already has. What? So Warp Coven sorcerers have boons, upgrades, basically, right? From a table. And if you're playing competitively, you pick the boons that you want and give them to your sorcerers before the game, generally. But the rules say that you can randomly determine. Now, if you randomly determine, rules are written in the White Dwarf article, right? Then there's no thing stopping you getting the same boon twice or 3 times on your 3 different sorcerers. Now, this is problematic because your boons go on your roster. So if you're allowed to randomly determine them, then that's dice rolling that you're doing in your house or your hotel room prior to submitting your roster for your tournament, let's say. Okay? So then, the only thing stopping you from cheating and saying, I mean, I don't even know this is a thing, like in terms of, is the one boon that you'd love to have 3 times, but there's nothing stopping someone from going, oh yes, I randomly rolled the boon that I wanted 3 times in a row. Like, oh, I made Warp Coven rosters until I'd rolled, do you know what I mean? Like, how do you police that? Like, I made Warp Coven rosters over and over again until I had rolled the boons that I wanted, and then I submitted that roster. Like, no. So they just changed it. So there's now no longer a mechanical benefit to randomly determining your boons. Interestingly, if the way I read this, if you're playing kitchen table play, right? Because it does say in matched play. If you're playing kitchen table play and you want to go to the table and go, cool, I think it's fun, I'm going to roll in front of your opponent, right? I'm going to roll randomly for my boons, for my sorcerers. In that scenario, where your opponent is watching you, you should legitimately be allowed to double up, or if you're very lucky, treble up on your boons, right? Yeah. Interesting one. Phobos, they get the climbing equipment change. Pathfinders, they get the climbing equipment change. Commandos, they also get the climbing equipment change. Yes, good. Inquisitorial agents, so 2 things for inquisitorial agents. the Hexorcist has the Chasten action, which lets him turn off, right, other operatives' unique actions. So, question: if a Hexorcist operative uses the Chasten unique action on a Mandrake Chooser of the Flesh operative's Soul Harvest unique ability, what happens? The Mandrake player cannot add new Soul Harvest tokens to their pool, but they continue to spend any acquired Soul Harvest tokens normally. So this needs an FAQ just because the Soul Harvest ability, you're building up a pool of currency to spend on buffs. And so one way of reading it might have been that when you turn off the ability, you lose access to the pool of currency that you've already built up. So it's just saying that it's not supposed to be interpreted that way. It's one of these things where, apart from climbing ropes, most of these FAQs and erratas relate to the two new teams, specifically the Mandrakes, because the Mandrakes have a lot of very complicated rules, but not all the FAQs for the Mandrakes are found in the Mandrake FAQ, right? This is a Mandrake FAQ, but it could be in the Mandrake FAQ, but it's in the Inquisition FAQ instead, because it just relates to the interplay between two specific things, right? Yeah. The Hierotex Circle. Two interesting things here. So, question: for the purposes of the Magnification Conduit ability and determining line of sight, can I treat the other friendly operative as the active operative, even if it's within engagement range of an enemy operative? So what this is talking about is the Magnification Conduit is the ability that the Hierotex Circle has that they can shoot with their shooty type actions through an Apprentech, right? Which you can do even if the Apprentech is in combat. I think that's cool. I think that is a, right, socially constructed. I think that is a buff, because I think I would not have assumed that the Apprentech could do that, because I would have assumed wrongly that the various things that would make him ineligible to shoot would apply when he was in combat. So this is saying, no, they don't. You can shoot out of combat. That's pretty cool. And then Technomancers. So they changed Technomancers. They buffed them in the Q1 2024 Balanced Data Slate. And now we're saying, question: after the Q1 2024 Balanced Data Slate, how do I determine the Cryptech actions available to the Technomancer operative and an Apprentech operative selected alongside the Techromancer? So this is to do with the fact that they took Rites of Reanimation, okay, and they made that into a different kind of an ability that didn't need to be activated by the Cryptech. So what they've said here is, answer: when a Technomancer operative is added to your roster or data slate, it already has Rites of Reanimation ability, so it then gains Canopec Repair and Nanoscarab Repair Swarm, right? Used to be 3 pick 2, now it just gets those 2 because the third one is baked in. The Cryptic actions, and so the Apprentech can perform those 2 Cryptic actions, but the Apprentech now cannot interface with Rites of Reanimation because it's not a Cryptech action, right? I don't know if that's a buff or a nerf, or how Hierotex Circle players were playing it post the data slate. I assume it's just a clarification. I bet there were some people that just didn't realise that didn't mean that they could have Rites of Reanimation through the Apprentech as well. So maybe for some people it's a nerf. I can't imagine. I think people are either playing it correctly or incorrectly in their favour. I can't imagine a situation where this is a buff for anyone. So perhaps a slight nerf from what people thought. But I think, more honestly, a fair clarification, this one. Yeah. Halfkin Salvagers, well, they got the climbing equipment change, which is fine. They also got, and this is interesting to me, so the Halfkin Grenadier has a utility grenade. And it's just saying that the utility grenade is a token that you put down. It basically, they say it persists even if the operative is incapacitated. So it lasts until the end of the turning point, even if the operative is incapacitated. So the norm in Kill Team is that when you die, like in the Wizard of Oz, right? When the witch dies, all the magic is undone. So when you die, everything you've done, it disappears. It's gone. It's no longer in the game. Unless you've got a rule on your thing that says, and there's quite a few of them, like various mines and other bits and pieces that persist even after you've died. That's going to stay there on the table and exist for the rest of the game, or the rest of the phase, or the rest of the turning point, or whatever it might be. And now they've moved this utility grenade into that category, which is cool. Hand of the Archon, so the Disciple of Yelandra, the Torment Grenade ability, changes the first sentence to read, select 1 point on the kill zone floor or on a vantage point. And it used to say 1 point in the kill zone, so I guess some people were trying to throw it at a wall or in mid-air. This actually ties in with an FAQ in the core rules as well, which I will point out when we get there. I'm not sure who those people were, right? Does Painbringer from the Elixicant operatives' combat drug ability allow operatives to ignore lost wounds from mortal wounds as part of the Mortal Wounds X critical hit rule? No. So this is just a thing where we have this term within the community of feel no pain type saves, which is just a feel no pain it's only a rule, I'm pretty sure, in Horus Heresy, but everybody understands what it means, right? Some younger people call them all like disgustingly resilient type saves, right? But it's not something that's defined anywhere in anything, and it has to be rewritten out each time. So they just had to clarify, like, no, it doesn't work on mortal wounds. Okay, let's move on. And it's a fair, if you're not steeped in Games Workshop history and going, oh yeah, I see what they're trying to do, it's one of those rules, cool. It needs to say it. It needs to say it doesn't work on things. That's fine. Crimson Duelist can fight twice, and one of those fights can be a hatchway fight, which is fine. It's good. So question, does the hatchway fight action qualify for the Crimson Duelist operatives Crimson Assault action, for example? Could it fight, then hatchway fight, or hatchway fight twice if those actions are possible to fulfill Crimson Assault? Yes. Good. Hatchway fight's not a rule that I like. I think that whole interaction could have been done more elegantly. I don't know how, because I'm not a rules designer, but like a restaurant critic, I know when I don't like the taste of something. It doesn't mean I can cook a better one, but I know when I don't like the taste of something. I just don't like hatchway fight. Feels a bit, clunky. Felgor Ravagers. So all they've done here, there's a lot of text, and you go cross-eyed looking for the bit that's italic, right? So, because it's all blue, but most of that blue is actually old FAQ, because it says, italicized text is new for this update. So all they've done is, basically the Felgor Ravagers, because their frenzy ability means that they're not dead, and there's a bunch of things that trigger when an operative is incapacitated. And then they've listed everything out as a separate exception for when it's incapacitated. So your opponent treats a Felgor... I'll read the whole thing. Your opponent treats a Felgor Ravager operative as being incapacitated when it gains a frenzy token for the following purposes. Okay? And only the following purposes. Scoring VP from TAC ops that require you to be incapacitated. Gaining pain tokens, Hand of the Archon. Soul Harvest tokens for Mandrakes, which is what they've added. Blooded tokens, and completing the performance allegories, the Void Dancer Troupe, which is just really interesting because it means forever. So let's say, hypothetically, the next team came along and they had something else that triggered off something being incapacitated. It would need to be added to this list of things that, and it will be. And so people will probably let you play it from day one as if it was on that list. But it's like, we're going to continually add things every time we add a new thing that triggers, oh yes, the Felgar are incapacitated when they're frenzied. Again, that's one of those rules where couldn't they have written it to be a more general case thing, like when something triggers when you're incapacitated, maybe there are other things that aren't on the list that don't trigger by Frenzied Felgar, and it's really important that they don't. If you know what they are off the top of your head, let me know in the comments, yeah? Really driving the engagement with this one. 2 separate comment questions, come on. Right, core rules, weirdly quite a few. Now, I may have missed some, because the core rules FAQ is a massive document, and scanning through it for all these asterisks is hard. So I'm going to go through them. Question. If an operative can perform a shoot action while within engagement range, e.g. the Starstorm Duelist for Corsair Void Guard, if it's in base contact with its intended target that's wholly within an area of smoke that would otherwise be obscuring, is the target still obscured? Yes. Interesting. Wouldn't have occurred to me to think that, right? So we're talking about those various kind of cowboy dual-wielding pistol archetype type models that can fire their pistols in combat. It still has to be a valid target, even though for a shoot action, right? So, yeah, if it's wholly within an area of smoke, it will be obscured, and therefore, does that? Yeah, it's an interesting one. So, I don't know if there's any other examples other than the smoke grenade where you can be obscured like that aren't expressly negated by someone being in engagement range. But yeah, interesting one. When an operative jumps, can it change directions while moving across the gap? No, it must move in a straight line. Yeah. I'm struggling to think, because jumps are so short, I'm struggling to think of when people are trying to make these curved jumps, but Yeah? Okay. Question. Do you have to declare the use of all rerolls before the dice are re-rolled? No. You can see the result of a reroll before deciding on a different reroll, and you can see the result of each reroll before deciding to reroll another as a result of the same rule, e.g. Relentless. Now, this is one of those things where, look, I'm not a real crinkly-brained tournament-playing guy, right? I've never in my life gone, well, I'm fishing for it. What this is for is when you've got Relentless and you've got some dice, and you're like, well, I'm going to re-roll dice because I want to get a crit. And I may even re-roll hits to try and get a crit, but I don't want to re-roll more hits than I need to after I've secured one crit, because, I could roll a hit into a miss. And I've never done that, right? From my perspective, Relentless means, cool, I'm going to pick up my misses, I'm going to roll them again. But I guess if you are the kind of person, it's a cool thing that you can do. Like, you can choose to re-roll a normal to try and go for a crit. So it's nice to know that if you have something like Relentless, you can do them one by one and stop when you get that. I think that can be the only use case, because no one's going to not re-roll a miss, right? There's not a scenario where having that extra miss is useful to you that I can think of. Question. If any rules happen at the same time during a turning point, but initiative hasn't been decided, e.g. the ready operative step of the initiative phase, who decides the order in which they're resolved? The person who previously had initiative in the first turning point, the defender. That's a really good FAQ, because that's not totally intuitive, right? And it's a question that needed answering, and I think it genuinely is a new ruling. I don't think you could have come to that from reading the rules. I'm trying to think of examples where things happen at the same time like that, and I can't. Like, ideally, in the best game design we could have, things wouldn't happen at exactly the same time. But in case they do, it's good to have a rule to catch them. Question. When placing a token, so this is the one I was talking about with the Hand of the Archon one as well, with their Torment Grenade, right? When placing a token in the kill zone, can you place it in the air or on the side of terrain features? No, it must be placed on the kill zone floor or on a vantage point. Good. Over to the column on the left now. I'm going to go from the bottom of the left-hand column. Question. Can an operative be wholly within a territory while also being on the centre line? Now, this one's really interesting, because it's like, what is the centre line? Whose territory is the centre line on? How thick is the centre line? If my territory is my board half and your territory is your board half, how does the centre line work? But apparently they've decided that yes, so think of the centre line as being, having some thickness, so that half of each side of the line can be in each of the opponent's territory. So yes, the position exists such that you can be wholly within a territory and on the centre line, which is really interesting to know. And it means that if you're playing by intent, you can now, rather than having to break out precision instruments, right? You now basically will say to your opponent, look, I am intending to place this character such that he is both wholly within your territory and on the centre line, because I'm trying to score two different attack ops, and your opponent should just let you. You shouldn't actually have to do the dexterity test, right? Of trying to find that very, very precise location where your base is. Just eyeball it and do it near as damn it, and have the assurance from the rules writers that such a place exists. Okay, is the way to go with that. Right, now this one. So, question. In Killzone Gallowdark, does the hatch of an open hatchway provide cover and is it obscuring? Yes, but resolve this as described above. And so I also screenshotted the old question that was above it, which is the funny one that's about... well, I'll read it again. I read it when it first got put in, and it's one of my favourite FAQs of all time, because it tells people to use common sense, which is funny to me because have you met most Warhammer players? But oh. Some terrain features, such as pipes, would realistically provide cover for an operative, but they are slightly elevated off the ground. Cover lines drawn to the operative would not cross the terrain feature, because a cover line is a flat line with no height, right? In such circumstances, should they still provide cover? if terrain features like this should realistically provide cover, treat small gaps between the bottom of a terrain feature and the kill zone floor as part of the terrain feature. Be sure to discuss this with your opponent in the determine kill zone step and use common sense to resolve it. Right. And so I'm glad that they've FAQ'd that. That's fine. But also, this brings me back to my weird thing about within distance horizontally. Like, if the whole game was predicated on occasionally having an aerial view and going, oh, the line is passing through this thing. It's not. But lines generally travel on the kill zone floor. So is it dimensions? Yeah. I know what's confused me. I don't know if I've articulated it very well, but let me know in the comments. Question. When making a shooting attack with a weapon with the blast special rule, using the close quarters rules, do you roll one less attack dice from all subsequent shooting attacks if the cover line drawn to the original target crosses an operative with an engage order? No. Only roll one less dice for the original target. All subsequent shooting attacks as a result of the blast special rule do not roll less dice. Makes sense. Also, I would say you can have a cover dice, or you get one less attack dice if there's another engaged model. Is one of those forgotten rules in Kill Team history, but it is a rule for Into the Dark. Right, we're not quite done because we got an upgrade to Compendium Space Marines, but they just got the same climbing equipment change as everybody else. Okay, good. Final thoughts. First of all, did I miss anything? I tried. If nothing else, even if you mute my voice, right? If nothing else, I really hope that I picked out all the changes and put them on the slides for you to make up your own mind about. At least that is a service that I can provide. I'm fully aware that I don't play Kill Team at the highest levels, and so some of these debates could have been raging among like the top players, and I wouldn't necessarily be aware of them. And also, I don't play into or against every team, and I certainly haven't played into or against Mandrakes. But what I really hope is this is a complete list of all the changes. I've at least managed that. So if I've missed anything, let me know, and I'll give you a pin in the comments. I think, right, that it's really positive that we've had a chain FAQ bundle like this put out at this time, because everybody's predicting a new edition is coming, the end of summer, right? And so the fact that they're still going through, and yeah, the big changes, the big balance changes, yeah, fine. That, like all the FAQs for Mandrakes, yeah, I would have expected that because they've got to make Mandrakes a workable product. But going back and changing like bits of verbiage, and relatively obscure stuff, like, it gives me hope that maybe they're having another pass at things because they've put together the rulebook for the next edition, right? And it's mainly a copy and paste job. Sounds negative, but I actually don't want them to randomly change stuff so that I feel like I've got more value. I'm hoping. I enjoy Kill Team, so I'm hoping that large chunks of the book are copy and pasted with only changes where we need to see them. And the fact that we're still getting these kind of erratas on certain things makes you feel like that process is still happening, which is a good thing. It could also be that we're not getting a new edition soon, and that the box, the Vespid versus jump pack or drop shoot or whatever it might be, Scions, is just the next season. You don't know. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This was a bonus extra video. I hope we're all looking forward to Kill Team Termination, which goes on pre-order tomorrow. I'll be getting up really early, going into town, going to stand outside Games Workshop for 10 in the morning, buy it at Games Workshop, get my coin, get my free Chaos Marauder miniature, right? And then I'll come home, and then I will be watching all the content put out by Glass Half Dead and anyone else who's got the box on advanced copy. And then I'll make my own reactions to their things that they've put out around Sunday evening. Give them a good clear 24 hours to make the hits for being first, because they're the ones with the early access copies, right? It's rude not to do that. If you think I should get early access copies, you can make this slightly more likely by subscribing to the YouTube channel. That would be really helpful. Thank you very much. And thinking of subscribers, I want to say a big thank you, especially, yes, to all my subscribers, yes, to all the people that watch to the end, yes, to all the people that leave a comment, but also to the people who are actually YouTube members, who pay me a monthly amount of real, actual money for doing this, right? Especially when I'm giving you an extra video in a week, So, if it wasn't for there are definitely times when I'm like, I'll skip it today, and then I go, oh no, people are paying for this, so I will actually do it. So it does make a difference. But especially to Nightfall and to Massive Crit, who are subscribed, both lunatics, to be perfectly honest with you, subscribed at the highest tier. There are 3 tiers, like a Patreon, but run through YouTube, They subscribe at the highest tier, they get a shout out, personalised shout out in every video. So thank you, gentlemen, I appreciate that a lot. I really genuinely do. All right then, thank you everybody. Have a great time. And I will see you on Sunday with my take, probably on Brew Brothers first. If you want to discuss the Brew Brothers rules as we get them from the men who read books, right? Then be in the Discord. I'm sure there'll be screen grabs and things firing around and people talking about stuff all Saturday. All Saturday, it'll be rules discussion central. So. Discord links down below, and that's free, by the way. Some people think, oh, do I have to be a YouTube member to get it? There's an extra room, there's an extra channel for YouTube members in the Discord, but most of it is just free, public. Do what you like. All right. See you next time. Cheerio, bye, 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 goodbye, bye.